Alright, you know the drill by now. It's been over a year since I made a video on 3DS Homebrew, and as I suspected, plenty of advancements have been made within the community, and a lot of mods have been released within the time frame. I also missed a lot of suggestions you guys left in the comments, which I really appreciate. So in this video, we're gonna go over some of the best pieces of Homebrew, some new, some old, and plenty obscure. Keep in mind, this is my third video on the subject, so I will purposefully omit the no-brainers like Anemone and FBI. We'll go about this in several different sections. Quality of life mods, emulators, game mods, and then a whole lot of unofficial ports you won't want to miss, so stick around to the end. Starting off with quality of life mods. Much like the ports section of this video, I missed a whole lot of applications in the previous video that you all left suggestions for in the comments, and I appreciate that, keep it coming. One of the most prevalent mods that kept coming up was NetPass. NetPass brings Street Pass back in a very clever and semi-organic way. Yes, Street Pass is still technically functional, but be honest, how many times do you actually walk past someone and get tagged these days? I've literally gotten 3 this entire year. NetPass completely fixes that issue by allowing you to connect your console to these different rooms that let you tag anyone else in said rooms. They aren't physical locations, of course. They're online servers, but in case you don't want to just cheat your Street Pass full of randos, there's an option to make it so you just randomly get a tag, as if you walked past someone randomly like back in the glory days. Honestly, a really great piece of homebrew that I think will extend the lifetime by quite a bit. Next up, we got JK's Save Manager. While in the original video, I did talk about Checkpoint, which does allow you to back up saves, a lot of people have noted that JK's Save Manager just worked better for them. It also allows you to upload your save data directly to Google Drive, so there's that. MCU Breaker lets your 3DS go gamer mode. I don't know why Nintendo gave the 3DS RGB. I know I mentioned this mod so many times, but it's just that good. Shocko over on GitHub has crafted a ton of mods that make it so your circle pad can control 360-degree movement in DS games. For those of you that don't know, when you're playing DS games on your 3DS and using the C-Stick, the C-Stick still only reads 4 inputs, up, down, left, right. It still doesn't have analog control, but these mods enable that. Heck, you can even use the C-Stick with games like Metroid Prime Hunters and Call of Duty, making them actually competent first-person shooters on the 3DS. I talk about this piece as if it's just one mod, when in reality it utilizes several, which I'll break down now. The most apparent quality of life mod you'll need for this is Twilight Menu++, which essentially allows you to run a DSi within your 3DS, snazzy UI and all. You just drop the NDS files into this folder and they all neatly show up. Another mod you're going to need for this is TW Patcher. Now what TW Patcher does is patch your DS games on 3DS to enable things like widescreen, filtering, upscaling, and of course these circle pad mods. If you want a full guide, check out the GBA temp thread in the description, or my own video guide on the subject. I did mention Mod Moon previously, but I kinda just brushed over it and undersold it. Mod Moon allows you to select which specific mod to use when launching a game. It's a mod manager, and a really good one at that. It's like SD Caffeine from the Wii U modding scene, if you're familiar with that. It started out as just a Smash Bros thing, but now it supports every title in existence. Cool. Another neat thing I missed was this FPS counter. It has a clock, battery widget, and it's a plugin for the NCR firmware, which you can use to stream your 3DS's screen to a computer via SnickerStream. If you mess with the settings, you can get a pretty solid recording without any hard modding. And yeah, it doesn't look as good as if you were to solder in a capture card, but at least you don't gotta take out a loan for it. You just need the Boot NCR app to, guess what, boot into the NCR firmware. But what is NCR firmware, you may ask? Well, you know how when you modded your 3DS, you installed Luma 3DS? That's a modified version of the 3DS's operating system cracked by hackers to run custom code. It's how the homebrew scene can even exist. Much like Luma 3DS, NCR firmware is a modified version of the 3DS's firmware with additional features such as cheats, plugins, debuggers, real-time saves, and of course streaming built in. Really impressive piece of homebrew. No clue how they figured half this stuff out. Another way you can stream your 3DS to your computer is through Arctic Base. Arctic Base pairs with the Citra emulator to let you play your 3DS games on your computer and sync the save files. It's pretty impressive, and it can result in better recordings than with SnickerStream, but it is a little more complicated to set up, admittedly. And the games don't show up on the 3DS's screen, just your computer, even though you can use the 3DS as a controller. Still, it's really useful. So you know how to stream your 3DS to your computer, but what about the opposite? Yes, you can actually stream your computer screen to your 3DS and get input working. Welcome playing Fortnite on the 3DS. Using Pinbox and the NCR firmware, you can play pretty much anything on your 3DS. That's it for quality of life mods this time around. Now let's talk emulators. In the previous 2 videos, I've covered a lot of emulators that work well and I still recommend them. However, it's been a while and there has been a few updates, so I may revisit a couple in this section. SNES 9X is still the best way to play SNES games on 3DS. RetroArch, in my experience, still requires a lot of tweaking for most of its cores to run well on the 3DS. I just found that standalone emulators ran a lot better and even looked higher res in some situations. But a lot of retro games can be injected into the 3DS's virtual console format via NSUI, including but not limited to NES, SNES, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Sega Genesis, Game Gear, and TurboGrafx 16. However, there are 2 pretty big caveats to this. The first caveat is a lot of people have posted on the GBA temp thread about audio problems, frame rate drops, and general incompatibility issues with some games. While the main games you'll probably want to play would most likely work, you'll likely run into some issues getting more obscure games to run. The second big caveat is the project seems to have stopped development entirely. The last version was Beta 28, which came out in 2020. While there were talks of the OG developer making a new version, the last post regarding the subject was made back in February, so I wouldn't count on it. This, and the fact RetroArch blows on 3DS, is why I install standalone CIAs for any emulators that interest me. Yes, any method of playing games that weren't designed specifically to run on the 3DS will pose problems, but standalone emulators from my experience have by far been the most stable experience. So I'll go over an emulator for each console previously listed that I know firsthand works. For NES, you want to go with MUS 3DS. This, along with SNES 9X, are available on Universal Updater, so they're real easy to set up. For Game Boy, go with MGBA. It's a pretty solid emulator, but admittedly, I haven't spent that much time with it, since I have almost no interest in GBA games, or Game Boy games. Most of the interesting ones have remakes or straight up ports to the DS. Sega Genesis, along with the Master System, run best with the Pico Drive emulator from my experience. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest Sega fan, so RetroArch might actually be better in this field, but I doubt it. Now for a console that can't be injected via NSUI, but can be emulated, the N64. Yes, believe it or not, there is an N64 emulator for the 3DS, but it doesn't run amazingly on old models, and even on the new ones, it chugs and crashes pretty frequently. I'm talking about Daedalus X64. While it's without a doubt very impressive how this even exists, the playability of most N64 games are very questionable. There also haven't been any updates since 2022, but a select few games like Doom 64, Mario 64, and Diddy Kong Racing are fully playable, so check out the compatibility list if you're interested. Now, PS1 emulation on 3DS is a very interesting topic. There aren't any standalone emulators that I know of, but apparently if you go through the trouble configuring RetroArch, some games are actually playable if you ignore audio issues. This, I have not tried because frankly, I don't care about PlayStation, but I have heard some surprising things about the scene, so if that intrigues you, give it a shot. Oh boy, almost forgot. If you want to emulate TurboGrafx 16 games on your 3DS, go with Temper PCE. It's a pretty solid emulator with a UI very similar to SNES 9X. Well, that's about all I have to say on emulators this time around. Now moving on to game mods. Super Mario Bros. Next is a massive overhaul mod that adds back tons of cut content. But there are also other mods within this series, I guess you could call it. Honestly, a really impressive lineup. These mods add new levels, worlds, themes, enemies, and even new songs in some cases. Really impressive work here. Another mod I've previously talked about was the Halo Revamped mod. It's a revamp of Quake's multiplayer that adds the guns, armor, and UI from Halo. But little did I know, Halo Revamped was actually outdated. There's a newer version called Renewed Solitude. Surprisingly, I couldn't find a single video on this specific version, so chances are this is the first you hear about it. It's pretty obscure, yet super underrated. Halo's multiplayer modes are always a fun time, and it being on 3DS is a blessing. Can't imagine how sick it'd be to do a LAN party with this. CTGP 7 has gotten a ton of updates since I last spoke about it. I really want to make a dedicated video on CTGP 7 alone, but doing so before Nintendo restores Mario Kart 7 fully would be kind of unfair to it. Pablo MK7 has been putting in work, man. Since the last time I spoke about this mod, they added synced custom characters, meaning you could see the exact models other players are using down to the color. They added CH packs, which make character creation and installation a lot easier. I made a video on this, by the way. And they even got private lobbies working before Pretendo could. I cannot overstate how worthwhile this mod is. It turns Mario Kart 7 into the ultimate Mario Kart. It adds a campaign and everything, dude. It's insane. Since I last spoke on 3DS Homebrew, a lot of advancements have been made in the Pokemon modding scene. When I first looked for Pokemon mods, it was really hard. Every website hosting them was riddled with ads and schizophrenics, but now there's a lot of these. I'm assuming it's partially because the 3DS is just super popular now. And over the past couple of years, the 3DS has gotten quite a few Pokemon ROM hacks, much like the original DS. Now, there are a lot of ROM hacks, and personally, I'm not into Pokemon at all. So I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you going, oh, this one is worth downloading, because I don't know what makes a good or bad Pokemon game. I'll just leave some links in the description. I recently got into Miitopia, and looking at mods for that game led to some interesting results. Miitopia Remixed aims to make the game harder with new UI, enemy stats, etc. It's a work in progress. The site says 50% done, and the latest update was not that long ago, so I'm looking forward to seeing this project's completed. But staying on Miitopia, there's a randomizer for this game. I really didn't expect that, but it's a pleasant surprise, adding more replayability. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3D also have randomizers. If you don't know what randomizers are, they're mods that randomize the positions of items, NPCs, enemies, etc. to make games more replayable, even though these games are like over 30 years old. Now moving on to ports. Much like the last video, I missed so many, and I'm sure I'm going to miss more despite really trying, so let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed. Yep, Doom is here, of course it is. Immediately jumping to something much more obscure, the visual novel Higurashi When They Cry, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, has been ported to the 3DS. Much like the Doom port, you'll still need the original game files, and you'll need to build the port yourself, which doesn't seem to be too difficult, but keep that in mind. Pip 3DS is a port of the simple score-based arcade-ish game. It's pretty fun to just boot up randomly and kill a couple of minutes. OmniSpeak is a port of the engine of the same name to the 3DS. It enables you to play Commander Keen episodes 4, 5, and 6, which is a series of 2D platformers made by id Software, the creators of Doom. This was an interesting find. Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead is an RPG I'm really surprised I've never heard of until now. It reminds me of something like Project Zomboid. It's an open-world survival RPG set in a post-apocalyptic map. It's got super in-depth survival mechanics and is more of a micromanaging game than it is a zombie game, which quite frankly makes it more interesting. A port exists for the 3DS, however, due to RAM limitations, the port doesn't work on old 3DS models, and it's not meant to be a genuine way of experiencing all it has to offer. Crashes are to be expected. But researching this game sent me down this huge rabbit hole, and it's clearly got a lot of history. Apparently over 700 people have worked on it. It's entirely open source. You can straight up look at all the files on GitHub. I'd recommend giving it a whirl. Special thanks to Master of Gaming 4149 for listing the following ports in a comment. This was super helpful. You know how older versions of Windows came bundled with simple games pre-installed? One of them was 3D Space Cadet Pinball, and wouldn't you know it, a port exists for the 3DS. Honestly, I don't think there are a lot of pinball games on 3DS, so this fills a pretty vast void. Blood is one of those older PC games that would get called a Doom clone had it not been for the different name. Seriously, if you told me this was some secret canceled Doom 3 build, I'd believe you. Surely there are some differences that aren't immediately apparent, but I didn't look that far. A port to the 3DS under the name JF Blood is available for download on GitHub. Quake 3, much like Quake 1 and Quake 2, has a port for the 3DS. It's buggy on the old 3DS models, and honestly, that's probably not much of a loss. The Quake series has always consisted of FPS games, and playing them with a touchscreen would just be weird. These ports are really well done though. Online multiplayer is intact for some of them, and that's really impressive. Duke Nukem 3D has a port for the 3DS. I never played it, so I'll just move on. Dang, we got a lot of Doom-like games on this system, don't we? Unlike Doom clones, Wolfenstein 3D came out before Doom and was made by the same people. It just wasn't as popular. Still successful enough to get sequels and even a soft reboot in recent times, but I hear Doom talked about a lot more. That's of course not to dock any points off this actual game or porting job. Descent 1 and 2 are another set of FPS games ported to the 3DS, but these are more focused on vehicle gameplay. I haven't seen any issues with the 3DS port, but it apparently struggles to hold at 60 FPS on old 3DS models, which is understandable. Turok 3DS is a port of a PSP custom game that was a mod of Quake, but holy crap, I was surprised by this game. It's got a full-on campaign, online multiplayer, and the online multiplayer modes are playable offline with bots. That in of itself is insanely impressive. As the name implies, it's inspired by Turok and GoldenEye from over on the N64, so if either of those games were your thing, definitely give this a try. CS3S is another port of a custom PSP game. It's top-down Counter-Strike. This was very intriguing, not only questioning how close it would be to real Counter-Strike, but also as to how top-down Counter-Strike would even play. It's surprisingly well made. There's even online multiplayer, which I didn't try out. Open Tyranny in 3DS is a port of the side-scrolling shooter game of the same name. It reminds me of Xevious from this old Pac-Man plug-and-play I had. Seems like a solid time. Much like Xevious, we also have Raptor 3DS, another quality port of a side-scrolling shooter. Oh man, Hexen Beyond Heretic is yet another Doom clone, are you kidding me? Hexen 2, Doom clone, Heretic, Doom clone, Doom 2, Doom clone. Oh boy, some different. OpenTTD 3DS is a port of a transportation business simulator. It reminds me of Roller Coaster Tycoon. This next one actually shocked me. RuneScape has been ported to the 3DS. I never expected an MMO to be ported, but here we are. I've talked about the Sonic ports so many times now, I'm just gonna speed through them. Sonic 1, 2, 3 CD, Mania, and Roboblast are playable on 3DS via their respective ports. Sonic Mania has longer loading times, and I don't think it works on old models. Same story with Roboblast 2, but that's to be expected. Open Titus is a port of the engine used in the Titus the Fox game, which is a classic 2D platformer. Open Jazz is a remake of Jazz Jackrabbit, another classic 2D platformer. Flappy Bird has a 3DS port. I mean, hey, that immediately puts the 3DS a step above iOS. Doki Doki Literature Club has a 3DS port. I don't know why this surprised me. I know what the basic premise of Doki Doki Literature Club is, due to being friends with the wrong people. Never played it personally, but it's super popular, and for some reason, despite how many visual novels are on the 3DS, it never crossed my mind that this might have made its way over. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is a Revice was a remade port of GTA Vice City for the 3DS, but unfortunately, due to a lawsuit, it's been taken down. You could still get the GTA 3 port, but I couldn't find the files for Vice City. If any of you know where to get them, please let me know in the comments. And finally, what better port to end off on than the Super Mario 64 recompilation? Yes, you can emulate Mario 64 via Daedalus X64, and it's not even that good of a game, but this is a proper one-to-one port to the 3DS. It runs really well, and you could even get 60 FPS and Render 96 mod packs. I still prefer the DS version with the Circle Pad mod, but this is a really neat way of playing a more accurate version of Mario 64 to the original. It's practically the original game with a few quality of life tweaks. If I remember correctly, you can even get it off Universal Updater. And that does it for ports this time around. It was shocking how many first-person shooters were ported over. I expected Doom, that runs on literally anything, but games like Quake 1 through 3, Halo, Renewed Solitude, and Kurok 3DS were very pleasant surprises. But yeah, that just about does it for this video. I'm sure I missed something out there, so leave a comment if I did. Also, check out the Discord server if you're interested.
Hello, super awesome guy.
Okie dokie. Hello, super awesome guy. It's me, Super Mario. Yahoo! You're so cool.
Yippee!
I VC there pretty often, and we do game nights, record events, and post memes. Pretty average Discord stuff. Anyway, thank you to the Homebrew community. A lot of cool stuff is made by such talented developers. And if you liked this video and that subscribe button is white, click it to make it gray. Have a nice day.